Hey YouTube, Do-It-Yourself Junkie 369 here, and in this video on sewing, I'm going to cover how to use the seam ripper, but I also found some scissors. So real quick, before we get into using the seam ripper, when you have the extra thread that you pulled out of the machine stuck here, what you want to do is just get in close to the fabric and snip off that edge. And basically, we'll do that real quick. And then where I snipped these ones, I did not lock in this piece of thread, and you can kind of see the stitch already just pulling apart there. And that's because this wasn't locked in, so it doesn't take anything to pull that apart. But here, this one is locked in, and when I pull on this free end, there's no stitches pulling apart. And cover that real quick on this side. Pulling on that, not really any stitches coming apart because it's locked in. Same thing on this edge, but here this isn't locked in, and I just pulled out maybe 8 stitches there, and I can do the same to this. So that's why you want to lock those in, so that doesn't happen. Pretty much if you don't lock your stitches in, it's kind of useless. Now on this one I didn't really lock it in, but since I have it starting and stopping in the same hole, that offers a little bit protection against that seam just ripping out. So on the seam ripper, usually you'll want to start where your stitch starts, but because I've locked these in, it's really hard to get the seam ripper under there and to break that seam apart. You're much better starting somewhere where there's not as much going on. So for example, I'd start just over here, stick the seam ripper under the stitch, and you can hit about every other one. You don't have to get every single one of them, because remember, now basically we created an end that's not locked in, so it's going to be really easy to pull that apart. So I do a good distance of them, and then I just pull it apart. And then from there, instead of putting the seam ripper in this way and trying to feed it down the seam, you want to avoid that, because the end of this is sharp and it can go right through the fabric and ruin whatever you're sewing on. And then sometimes this blade portion here could catch on the fabric and slice the fabric up as well. So normally what I do is I face the blade and the point away from the fabric, go down there to about the last loose stitch, and then rip that one out. And then from there you've freed up some more, so you just pull it apart more. And then when you stop being able to pull it apart, and you want to be careful with pulling this apart, if it's real light fabric, you don't want to pull on it very hard. You go in there, face the blade away from the fabric, and rip that out. And and then pull it apart a little bit more. And you just keep doing that until you've ripped out whatever, completely removed whatever seam you need. And then there'll be little pieces of the seam or the thread from the seam sticking out of the fabric. You just want to go and pull those out. And you can get quite quick at this method. And I'll have a link below for the seam ripper, plus in my other videos I have a link for the scissors, the machine, basically whatever I happen to be using in that video, if you want to head to Amazon and buy that item. And on the machine I've included the model that I'm using, plus I've also thrown the Janome 3000 HD up there. That's the one that I plan on getting. someday. And basically the HD stands for heavy duty, although if you check out my review, this thing's able to handle plenty of a heavy duty workload. Probably wouldn't do leather. The HD is designed more for leather, and then the pressure foot also comes up higher for thicker materials, which is one thing I ran into in the review. The pressure foot here barely had enough clearance to make it over the material I was sewing. And basically that's it. I mean, I've pulled out a good portion of this seam, and after you're done, all that's left is little tiny holes in the fabric that you probably won't be able to even see if you use the appropriate size needle. There's one other method. You can use a razor blade. Not all razor blades are created equal. The ones I like using are extra sharp, and I'll have a link for these as well. They're sharper than normal razor blades you get. And to use one of these, you almost need to get to the inside of the seam. Like, it's really difficult to impossible to start cutting open a seam like I did with the seam ripper. And part of the problem here is it's really sharp, so it's really easy to cut a hole through your fabric if you're not careful. And same thing on the inside. You just split the seam open, but then because of your using a razor blade, you have to face the blade into the stitching and basically cut forward. And while you're doing that, you could end up cutting the fabric that you're trying to separate. And it probably won't happen with this 1000 Cordura, but if I was doing something lighter, I have cut a hole through whatever I was working on trying to remove the seams. And so basically that's how you use the razor blade. Hope you liked the video. Please hit the like and subscribe button, and come back for our next video, which will be over I think on that one I'm going to cover the box X stitch and do like a real quick low profile holster that you can make out of using the box stitch and some webbing and 2 buckles. And I'll have links to where you can buy that stuff at. Hope to see you then. Thanks for watching.